This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. Fierce fighting in Myanmar continues, and the dictatorship is under threat. A bribe-taking doctor puts thousands at risk. And a man kills his own one-year-old daughter in a truly horrifying manner. But firstly, to our headline story. Myanmar's cruel and tyrannical dictatorship is under attack on three different fronts. Their military in some areas of the country is now in disarray. They are being assaulted savagely by armed rebel forces. Many looking on are predicting this could be the end of Myanmar's dictatorship, one that has ruled for 50 years. And in that time, those evil men have not only murdered those that called for democracy, but have enslaved an entire nation.
Myanmar's military regime has admitted it is facing a very heavy assault by anti-government forces who began a coordinated offence at the end of last month. The rebels have even taken control of several towns in border areas as well as dozens of military outposts. Spokesperson Min Tun said Myanmar troops were under heavy assault from a significant number of armed rebel soldiers in Shan State in the north, as well as Kaya State in the east and Rakhine State in the west. Now, that is a very big deal, for the cruel and tyrannical government is now fighting on three different fronts, and those attacks are very closely coordinated. Anti-government fighters are using hundreds of drones to drop bombs on military posts, and some sites have now been abandoned. The offensive began in Shan State, near the border with China, and under the Three Brotherhood Alliance, a grouping of Myanmar's National Democratic Alliance Army, as well as the Tang National Liberation Army and the Arkan Army. Their aim is to eradicate the oppressive military dictatorship of Myanmar. And they have been fighting, and that fighting has spread to many other areas of the country, including West Rakhine and Chin states, and they border both Bangladesh and India. So, for the dictatorship of Myanmar, they are looking out of their windows and they are being attacked left, right and centre, and those attacks are proving very successful. But more than 200,000 people have been displaced by fighting, including children, and some have been killed. The cruel military of Myanmar has long claimed it is the only organisation that can hold Myanmar together, and had ruled the country for 50 long, cruel years. But what they have created is a dictatorship and the poorest country in Southeast Asia. The military must be purged from Myanmar, the people freed of the shackles that have taken their freedom and their liberty. But there is just one single question. What price will they have to pay for their freedom?
There are few stories that impact me. The truth is, I can report a story. The camera switches off and I literally in minutes have forgotten what story I've just read. I do so many of them. But this one is different, and this one has a headline that on its own has the power to shock you. The headline reads, 2 dead as a foreigner jumps from a condo clutching a 1-year-old baby.
This is a tragedy beyond tragedy. And it has an eerie similarity to a story I read very early on in my career, a story I remember oh so vividly. In that story so long ago, a woman had left a baby unattended in her apartment while she went shopping. And while she was away, that child found a way into the apartment's bathroom. It climbed up the toilet to a small window, and somehow that baby managed to unlatch that small window, and then it climbed through it. The child fell over 20 stories to the pavement below. And that is truly a tragic tale. I think you will understand as to why it is one of the few stories I still remember. But this story right here, quite unbelievably, is remarkably similar. But it is even more tragic, because in this case, it was no accident. The incident this week all started with a family argument, and that argument turned into tragedy after a Chinese man jumped from the 22nd floor of a central Phnom Penh condo. The argument had been one of a husband and a wife, and as the row got more and more intense, the man's anger turned into a blind, murderous rage. He grabbed a kitchen knife and he stabbed his wife. His wife was a Vietnamese lady, and she was very severely injured, but she managed to flee the apartment bleeding profusely. The man was then left alone, and he looked around and he seemed to see no way out from his crime, so he did the unimaginable. He decided to kill himself, but in doing so, he also decided to murder his 1-year-old daughter. Now let's pause for just a moment, for I want you to understand the true depths of horror as to what happened in that apartment in those few final minutes. The man walked over to his own child, just 1 year old. He gathered her up in his arms. He went to the balcony and he jumped, falling 22 floors, the child in his arms. And I simply have no more words.
This week's Crime Desk has a doctor who was caught accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes. And there has been more horrific violence in Sihanoukville as a man is discovered left for dead in a canal. He had been handcuffed and savagely beaten. A senior doctor faces criminal charges for a hospital job scam that netted him hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Phnom Penh Municipal Court yesterday charged and jailed a former government official accused of allegedly cheating more than $140,000 from just 4 medical students. And that money was to secure jobs at public hospitals. A document of the Phnom Penh Municipal Court identified the accused as Sok Por, a 52-year-old former health official. He has been charged with breach of trust, and according to statements, the doctor demanded payments from many victims, ranging from $3,500 to $8,000. with the intention of using those funds to guarantee jobs by bribing other health officials. The latest 4 victims had been the largest and had paid a staggering total of $142,000 to the accused. Now, this kind of bribery is quite simply deadly. It means that those that get the jobs are not the best qualified doctors, but those who have paid the most. And quite simply, that is cruel, as it endangers potentially thousands of people's lives. The doctor himself faces a jail term of between 6 months and 3 years. A Chinese man has been found in a canal in Priya Sihanouk. He had been savagely beaten, handcuffed, and then left for dead. It was simply a horrifying beating that he took, but he did not die, as he managed to hold his head above the canal water, and fortunately his cries for help did attract a passerby. The provincial police chief said the police are currently investigating this incident and the victim is now receiving medical attention. According to local police, on Tuesday, a group of Chinese men were seen having a very serious altercation in the city. It was later that same evening one of the men was found handcuffed in the canal. And rather embarrassingly, he was found near the provincial governor's home. According to an eyewitness, at 11:30 p.m., a black Land Cruiser was seen with 5 men. The car was driving at speed, but then came to an abrupt stop. The men leapt out and grabbed the victim, bundled him into the vehicle and drove off. Later, that kidnapped man was found half dead and handcuffed in the canal. It is, unfortunately, just another statistic in the list of crimes that follow a very frightening similar pattern. I'm still thinking about that man who jumped with his 1-year-old daughter. That story is going to stick with me a long time. Right, here we go. Next segment. Let's end with some good news this week, as the World Bank says that Cambodia's economy advances despite external domestic headwinds that are slowing down other nations in the region. The kingdom has a growth projection of over 5%. But why should this interest you? I mean, why would you care? Well, allow me to explain as to why this matters to you and how, in fact, it could make you richer.
Okay, so you've retired and you have money in a Cambodian bank. And if you're smart, you would have gone for a fixed interest rate deposit that could garnish you with close to 7% if you've invested in KHR, closer to 5% if your money is in USD. You are like so many others, including myself. I myself am moving more money into KHR, Khmer Real, to get that super high 7-8% interest rate. And the reason I feel comfortable doing this is due to financial reports like this one. Now, this is where you have to listen to the future numbers. But we'll start with the present, for the World Bank has said this week that Cambodia's economic growth is projected to reach 5.4% in 2023. Then, growth is expected to pick up to 5.8% in 2024, and quite incredibly hit 6.1% in 2025 on anticipated increases in infrastructure investments and benefits from regional trade agreements. And remember, that's from the World Bank. Now, what that means as an investor is I no longer look at term deposits of 1 year. I can now look towards 3-year deposits, and that makes me an awful lot more money. And that is why those potential dull financial reports are well worthy of note, because they can make you richer. The report also said there is room for improvement, with business environment to boost productivity and competitiveness, and also a need to upgrade infrastructure. And what that means to people like you and I is there's room for improvement, and therefore the future for the kingdom's economy has vast potential.
It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week.
Right, let's play a quick game just to get the old weather underway. You're looking at a screen that tells you it's 100% humidity, it's -11, and the precipitation is 5%. So where in the world has humidity of 100% at -11? Well, we'll be coming back to that later. We switch over now to our weather. And what this clearly shows is more clement weather. Look at that. There's sun peeking through. There's cloud. There's a touch of rain. But all round, it's a damn sight better. Now, let's flick back again to that other chart. Now, if you guessed the North Pole, you would be right. And guess what? Santa's there right now. And soon he will be on his way. Hurrah!
This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly Roundup.